Hiya folks, it's Jocelyn. Welcome back to Yogi with a Book. I have my very first BookTube SFF babbles for you for this year. I have been meaning to do some of the other babbles and have just been terrible about them, but I love the idea of talking about underhyped SFF, which is what today's topic is. I do have a particular fondness for finding books that not a lot of people are talking about and trying to uplift them more and more. So because I did something similar a couple of years ago with my end of year lists, this one I wanted to do an updated version, which for the most part means these are all books that I read last year, and many of them did come out in 2019, though not all of them. One of the first things that I thought about when making this list too was organizing my Goodreads by the amount of reviews. So these are objectively books that are underhyped, except maybe one or two titles. So let's just get right on into them. We are going to start with the Books of Amba series because Realm of Ash came out last year, and it was a book that I had nominated for my favorite fantasy of the year, but did not end up making the list. So Realm of Ash and Empire of Sand are both by Tasha Suri. They follow two sisters. This is based on Mughal Empire, India, and we follow very strong women in a very fantastical and just excellently crafted world. Of the two, Empire of Sand is my personal favorite, and I do have a full review for this book on my channel, but I don't mention enough that I also really love Realm of Ash. One thing in particular that I really love about this book is something that I've never seen anyone else do, and our main character gets motion sick. As a person who is always getting car sick, it doesn't matter how long I'm in the car, just having these little moments where Tasha Suri is pointing out like, yeah, she's pulling over by the side of the road because she feels gross. It just made me feel very happy and very seen, even though it's such a small detail. So yeah, these books I will forever uplift. Tasha Suri easily became one of my favorite authors and an auto-buy author at that. Both of these I think are incredibly underhyped. Realm of Ash, I would say even more so because it is the second book in the series and it just came out, I think, in October or November. Another underhyped series that I nominated for BookTube SFF Awards this year is the Love Sugar Magic series, and I nominated book 2, A Sprinkle of Spirits by Anna Meriano. This is a middle grade series following Leo Logroño, whose family is a bunch of baking witches. She gets into lots of hijinks, she hates being left behind by her older sisters, and she just is such a fun and feisty character. Book 1, A Dash of Trouble, came out in 2018, and book 2, A Sprinkle of Spirits, came out last year, 2019. This trilogy does end this year. The third book is already out, though I haven't read it myself yet. But I loved book 2 even more than I loved the first, and I just cannot wait to see how this story wraps up. If you like wholesome family dynamics and just a little bit of contemporary magic, I find that this is just the perfect balm for really heavy and dark times. There is so much lightness and joy in it, and I am so thankful that it is out in the world. Another book that came out last year that was a YA debut was Nocturna by Maya Motain. This is such a fun Latinx-inspired fantasy. It talks so much about colonialism and what happens after your colonizers leave. Plus, there is own world mythology. So I did talk about this book quite extensively in that recommendation video where I did own world mythology books. I thought this was an incredibly fun time, and I love Alfie and Finn's relationship. It's also just wonderful to see a place where the magic is based on Spanish language, and it has a really scary villain, which is always a plus for me. Yet another debut I have from last year is the YA Shatter the Sky by Rebecca Kim Wells. This is about an angry bisexual girl who decides to steal a dragon to save her girlfriend. This once again talks a lot about colonialism and imperialism, which I loved for it, but also it has some of the most interesting world building I think I've ever experienced. To steal back her girlfriend, she has to sort of go undercover and starts to basically apprentice for this person who is developing these like chemicals used to train dragons. Our main character's people had an innate ability to deal with dragons, but the people in power do not. And so they had to develop this very scientific way of training them that apparently is very similar to how like police dogs and canines are trained. It was fascinating to see all of those little scenes where she would have people like bursting this one chemical and it made the dragons do this thing, and then bursting this one to make them bond with them. And I have never seen anything like that, and I cannot wait to see more. This is another first book in a series, and I believe the second one comes out this summer. And then we have Midsummer's Mayhem by Rajani LaRocca. Very much like Love, Sugar, Magic, this is a middle grade about baking and magic, except this one, if you couldn't tell from the title, also takes a lot of inspiration from Midsummer Night's Dream by Shakespeare. Our main character here is part of an Indian American family, and she does sort of enter this baking competition. It also so happens that everyone around her is basically reenacting A Midsummer's Night's Dream. So there's fairies, and there's magic, and there's a lot of confusion, as you would expect. This book is a lot of fun, and I believe this was also a debut, and that the author is coming out with a different book inspired by a different Shakespeare play, maybe? I could be wrong on that. But this one also came out last year, and definitely one I would recommend to middle grade readers. Moving out of more newer releases, I also have A Properly Unhaunted Place and A Festival of Ghosts by William Alexander. This is again another middle grade, and this one also has to do with ghosts. Apparently I just love middle grade with ghosts, but that'll be a conversation for a different day. This book follows Rosa Diaz, whose mother's job is to sort of pacify ghosts and to make sure that they're not haunting people too hard, so that ghosts and humans can still live side by side. However, in the first book, her and her mom moved to a town that is not haunted and is the only place in this world that isn't. The whole book we follow Rosa Diaz trying to figure out why exactly that is, because she thinks a place without ghosts is just completely bizarre. It turns out she's not wrong, and by the end she's really made a lot of trouble for the town, but it's so much fun to watch. She also becomes fast friends with a boy whose parents work in the Renaissance fair, and there's just so many different details in this book that I don't feel like I've seen in other places. Their friendship is really the best part of book 2 as well, and I'm not sure that the series is going to continue. The ending of book 2 didn't feel satisfying enough to be the end of a series. However, I don't think there's a third book planned, so maybe it'll help you going into the series knowing that. I did like the first book a little bit more than the second, but I just really needed to follow Rosa's story more, so I ended up picking that one up really quick after I read the first. The final book I want to talk to you about today is The Assimilated Cuban's Guide to Quantum Santeria by Carlos Hernandez. This is a short story collection, all featuring sci-fi things, if you couldn't tell from the title. And this is by the author of Saul and Gabby Break the Universe. However, unlike that one, this is adult. One of the things I wasn't expecting when I went into this short story collection is seeing the very first version of our character from Saul and Gabby. This mostly follows different Cuban American people in these short stories who have different levels of odd things happen to them. There are some repeat characters, so this does read almost like a full narrative, but each individual story can also be read as its own thing. I think that Carlos Hernandez has a lot of fun when he's writing, and you can definitely see that when you compare his middle grade and his adult works. And he also just clearly loves talking about science fiction, talking about multiverses, and all of these what ifs. I think the questions he brings up in his work are my favorite thing about them, and while I didn't love this quite as much as I loved Saul and Gabby, I think it definitely gave me more insight into that story and to who he is as an author. I do want to own my own copy of these one of these days, but it's out of print. So I did happen to get this one from the library, and I'm hoping eventually I will find a physical copy for myself. And there you are. I think that's 7 to 9 books that I talked about in this video. Again, many of these do not have a lot of ratings on Goodreads because just a lot of people aren't seeking them out for reasons that I'm not entirely sure of. I also wanted to keep this list of books that I recommend. I enjoyed all of them. Most of these came out last year and I did read them in that time when they were still very new. And hopefully that means that you can still get access to them either from an indie bookstore or your library or what have you. I am very excited to see everyone else's videos for this babble because again, underhyped SFF is truly what I love best. And if you have any recommendations for books that you think I would like based on the ones I'm recommending here, please let me know down in the comments. I would love to check out more titles. But otherwise, that is going to be it for me today. So thank you all so much for watching, and I'll be back with another video shortly. Bye.